Society net on the 08 machine. The Western Washington Amateur Television Society is a group of amateur radio enthusiasts that get together to have a net on Wednesdays and Saturdays between 8 and 9 o'clock. We have a repeater located up on Cougar Mountain. We transmit on 70 centimeters. It's a crossband repeater and spits out images at 1.2 gigahertz. To find out more about the Western Washington Amateur Television Society, Google WW7ATS. That's Google WW7ATS. They'll take you to our homepage where you'll find some information about our club, frequencies we transmit on, and also located there will be a link that will take you to YouTube, where we stream our nets held on Wednesdays and Saturdays between 8 and 9 o'clock. Also, we'd like to thank the SeaTac Repeater Association for the use of WW7STR's repeater 147.08 with a Pacific tone of 103.5 for our nets held for the Western Washington Amateur Television Society. So with that information passed, I'll pause in case anybody has emergency traffic or needs to make a contact on the 08 machine before our net gets fully underway. This is Dave, KD7CYM. Hearing none, the net will acknowledge that KF7UHK Jessica has checked in. N7KC checked in and out. Richard K7ITX is checked in. Wade W7ITL is in. N7QO Jim. And myself, Dave, KD7CYM. And I see WU7N James has acquired the net. Is there anybody else that would like to check in? And let's go up to Jessica, KF7UHK.
This is Jessica, KF7UHK, and I got roped into working this weekend. You know, they send these little messages across a little computer screen on your bus and said, would you like to work this one, or this one? And two of them I really did not want to, but one of them I actually thought, okay, I'll do it. But it was a 10-hour day, so it was a long day, driving back and forth between the east end of Fidalgo Island and the west end of Fidalgo Island over to Skyline Marina, and everything in between Anacortes and there. So that was. Otherwise, it was very nice. I had a lot of people getting on board both ends. A lot of people going down to the ferry. I go down to the ferry that takes you across to Lopez Island, and I think other places too. And that was a very busy ferry today. So that made it more enjoyable. If I have lots of people coming on board, I feel like I'm earning my money, and it makes it much more fun to get people on and off the bus. Feel like I'm doing something. If I have an empty bus, those days can just really drag on. It'd be different if I had a radio I could listen to, but I don't have one I can listen to other than chatter on our bus system. So that's what I did today. I pass it back. This is Jessica, KF7UHK.
HK. Let's go to Richard, K7ITX in Kent.
All right. Well, great to see you, Jessica. Actually, I was just thinking, that another reason why you would appreciate that run is because you used to always practically live on the water too. I think when you had your sailboat, and so I know that's running through your mind. In fact, I wonder if you feel kind of sad about not having your boat. Kind of, right? Yeah, just a little bit. Yeah, that's about how I feel about not having my boat now, too. I mean, it was great when you had it. Well, I lived in West Seattle, and I had a view of Blake Island and Southworth, and there's no way I I was going to live there for 8 years and not be able to go out. And I had a 17-foot mahogany 1962 wood hold Tollycraft, open boat, great for fishing, built like a tank. I'm telling you, mahogany. And it was really cool how they would, it'd leak like a sieve, but after it was in the water for, maybe an hour or two, it would just swell up, and then you do that I don't know if I probably couldn't do it in a sailboat. In a powerboat, if you kind of go halfway between a plane and going slow, the boat gets high like that, you could pull the plug, believe it or not, and self-bail. I mean, that was your only hope in a boat like mine. But, oh man. Of course, I was a lot younger and very foolish, going to Blake Island, and camping there. It's funny how it's always beautiful and calm when you go to a place like that, but then the next morning when you wake up, 6-foot seas, oh my God. My poor little boy, Alex, my son, he climbed up into the very nose part, where you have all the junk that you store in a boat like that. It's a closed-in front end, but just junk in there. The anchor, the bumpers, but he didn't care. It was too horrifying for the trip back to West Seattle, and I can't say I didn't blame him. I was a little nervous myself. I was comforted by, again, the lighthouse, the lighthouse in Alki. I mean, you don't ever realize how important they are until you're in conditions like that, because it's weird how when you look at the shoreline, it all kind of looks the same, and then finally you see that little beacon of light, and you go, there's Alki. And then the only other thing that gave me a little bit of comfort was the fireboat seemed to be kind of toddling along, and I think maybe he had his eye on me, because I was the only little guy out there. 6-foot seas and a 17-foot boat is not the smartest thing in the world, but and then of course, and that's if you got power. But boy, if you ever lost power in a deal like that, all bets are off. So anyway, we made it back safe and sound. I never did that ever again. K7ATS back to net control.
TX, thanks for that. Let's go to Wade, W7ITL in Tacoma.
W7ATL here in Tacoma. This will be just a quick in and out. Just hi everybody. I'm not feeling that great still, so I'm gonna cut out, and you guys have a good evening. All right, Whiskey 7 India Tango Lima, back to net.
ITL, thanks for that. Let's go to Jim, N7QO in Covington.
N7QO. Thank you, Dave. Good evening, everyone. Wade, if you're still there, hope you feel better. Just FYI, your audio is very strong. It was really a decent signal there tonight. Jessica, empty bus. I don't know. Sorry about that. Yeah, I can appreciate wanting to help people and all that, but sometimes maybe there's fewer problems with less people. I don't know, just a thought. Jim, yeah, I see the shack. My picture has been going in and out a little bit tonight, but anyway, the shack is there. I was going to mention that. Let's see, Dick, the boat. Wow. Usually, I thought the stern is where you get the smoothest ride. I don't know, maybe he was just trying to hang on with the smallest amount of space, I would guess. But I don't know. Oh, well, yeah, wouldn't it be the bow that would be getting the most up and down movement, though? I would think. I don't know. Can't quite get that water. Maybe green water. Oh well. And for those of you who only miss your boat a little bit, I have had other people tell me that same thing. If it flies or if it floats, rent it. Don't buy it. So, I don't know. Maybe there's a lot of truth in that, but I don't know. You know, you got to have some fun. Everyone's got to have a couple of vices. That's the way I look at it. Back to you, Dave, N7QO.
QO, thanks for that. And get an ID out here again. This is the Western Washington Amateur Television Society net on the 08 machine. I'm Dave, KD7CYM. Well, let's go on to James, WU7N in Bellevue.
Thank you, David. Well, yeah, I didn't realize this, but Richard, Dave, Jessica, of all former boat owners, didn't realize that. I wonder if there's any other former boat owners in the regular group. Well, Jessica, wow, 10-hour day. I was going to say, what a wimp. I mean, only 10 hours, my goodness. How do you drive nonstop for 10 hours? I hope you get breaks. Thank you very much for doing that. But, wow, that's actually a hard day, a long, hard day. I don't care if there are people in there or not in there, especially with no radio. And they don't even give you, like, an FM radio or anything to listen to. I mean, no music or anything. You have to have both hands on the wheel and totally focused on the road, I take it. Yeah, I think so. I could come and maybe see that. I don't know. And planes. Yes, Jim, I've heard that too. And the other one I heard is a boat is a hole in the water you dump money into. That's what I've heard. Oh, and then the happiest day of your life for planes and boats is the day you buy it and the day you sell it. I don't know. I think it's all a matter of personal drive and where you want to put your time, money, energy, and effort. But I mean, I don't know. I always view. I haven't flown obviously since before COVID, but those were some experiences, and I got to know people and see stuff and do things I never would have done if I hadn't done it. So I thought it was money well spent. Still do, although it was looking back on it, probably a teacup of money. What I want to do here is share a screen because there is something that happened. Didn't get a lot of media attention. Let me see if I can get this to work. And right now, I'll show you something. A satellite called Jupiter 3. And it successfully got boosted, left boost phase, and went into orbit. And it's, I think Hughes is a prime on this one. But what's really interesting about this, it's a geostationary satellite, and I believe I read it has something like 300 microbeams on it. That is, this thing, it's a data satellite, and its mission function is to get two-way data to places you just can't get fiber optics, like on aircraft or boats at sea, or maybe just the boondocks or rural areas. So I thought this was really interesting. I'm just as much fascinated by the fact that I don't think I saw this on any kind of normal news. If you're not into telecommunications or space-related stuff, you didn't see this. But it's the Hughes Jupiter 3, and I believe the solar array on it is 7 stories. 7 stories, and the satellite itself, I think, is about as big as a bus. So we have to ask Jessica how big that is. So anyway, this is James, WU7N. I'm going to turn it back to our net control for the Western Washington Amateur Television Society.
7N, thanks for that. This is Dave, and this is KD7CYM and the Western Washington Amateur Television Society note. I got 68 degrees, slightly cloudy here in Lake City. Boy, talk about maritime stories. I remember probably had owned a sailboat less than 2 weeks, and one July afternoon on a weekend decided to go out, my partner and I, to Lake Washington, and it was blowing about 15 to 20 knots wind-wise. And so we got the sails up, and we were kind of looking around Lake Washington and wondered why we were the only boat out on the lake. And it was because of the extreme wind and the 3-foot waves that were bouncing up and down. And probably about the first turn that we did was the boat went about 40 degrees to the side and almost swamped the cabin of the boat over the gunnels. So we didn't know that a sailboat could tip that far over and still stay floating, but we got back with that. But the good news was, after about 2.5 years of owning a boat, we put it up for sale, and we got a bite, and we actually made about $6,000 on the sale of the boat. So we had made there. But if you had to figure out the mortgage that we had to pay and the insurance, I think we were probably just glad to get out of it. So that was pretty good. So that was about it. This is Dave, KD7CYM. And let's go back up to Jessica, KF7UHK.
Yeah, when we finally put it up for sale, we had it on dry dock because it needed the bottom painted. They told us we probably should replace the propeller, and I think the propeller is about $2,000, and the bottom paint was probably about $2,000. And just to take the boat out of the water and put it back in, because it was 33 foot, usually would run us probably about $400 for the round trip of taking the boat out of the water and put it back in again. And one of my favorite stories is to pull a boat out of the water. I just thought of this right now. When you pull a boat out of the water, you take it into a slip that has the cranes that has the straps on it, and you get everybody off the boat, and then you pull it in really close into where the straps are, and then they snug up the straps so the boat won't go anywhere. And then the person who brought that in, usually it's me. I don't know why, but it always ends up being me. Then you go to the very front of the boat, where the tip of the front of the boat, where they call the pulpit is, and you climb up this rickety, slimy, cold, wet ladder that's probably 3 stories high. You have to go up from down where the water is to the very top of this pretty high dock where they're going to pull the boat up onto, and it's absolutely just terrifies you because it's wet, it's slimy, it's cold, it's full of barnacles. You're hanging on this thing for dear life. It's not a nice step ladder. It's like an old-fashioned metal straight up and down ladder, and that was never very fun to do. So there. And I'd like to acknowledge, yes, insurance is expensive. Mortgage, docks were not cheap. I can't remember anything else. And tabs once a year were probably about $1,000 to put tabs on it, to have a license just like your car. And so that. And then now buses. The bus I drove today was about a 35-footer. Normally they're about 40 feet, so it's about 35 feet long and about 8 feet wide. It's pretty. They're pretty massive things. But a 7-story tall solar panel, I'd love to see that. That just sounds so cool. It sounds like a nice thing that someone has decided to do. I think that's really cool. And the Perseid meteor shower is coming up really soon, if it's not right now. This is KF7UHK.
UHK, all eyes to the skies. Let's go to Richard, K7ITX.
Well, yeah, you're right, Covington Jim, that it would be calmer, in the stern as opposed to the bow. But the bow was closed, the stern was wide open. There was no flying bridge. Basically where I steered the boat, just all you had was a windshield. Well, 6-foot seas, the waves were coming over the windshield. I was just soaking wet. The waves were crashing into, my little kid would have been back by the stern. He would have been soaking wet. So, no, he was mainly, I think, first of all, the nice thing about being in the closed bow was, first of all, you didn't have to imagine how we were going to die or drown. You know, you could just, hum yourself to sleep or whatever. I don't know. He just stayed pretty quiet. And so anyway, that's why he was where he was, is just so he could hide from the impending doom. But, oh man, I mean, I had really great times. You launch from West Seattle, and then downtown Seattle's just right across, and I'd take the boat over there on, I guess it was Friday night, or maybe, I think it was Friday night or Saturday night, one of those nights. They'd have really good concerts right there on the pier, and I could anchor right behind. I could anchor backstage, and I saw George Benson that way, and a couple, can't think of their names, a couple brothers from the South that were pretty famous, but probably the funnest I had. The Russian Navy trainer, a high-masted sailing ship where they trained sailors. Well, it came in for the Goodwill Games and docked in Seattle. But of course, as crazy as I was back then and young, I pulled right alongside, and it was really cool how, standing up, I could look right in all the little port windows of the dormitory where the sailors were. So I could, wave at them, and they'd wave back, and eventually I met some friends that way. That became really good friends with the KGB agent, and he went home. I took him to the house. Remember he called back home to Vladivostok. This is right when it had become Russia, and it was no longer the Soviet Union. So literally, I was there when they switched flags. So that was really fun. And the Goodwill Games was really fantastic. I'll just never forget that. It's very enjoyable. I shared letters with the Russian agent after we sent each other postcards, that sort of thing. Maybe I shouldn't have been, but to my amazement, he was chief authority of the ship. I mean, once I became his friend, I didn't need any. I could walk up the gangplank, and I didn't need any credentials or anything. I could just walk right on the ship, and it's pretty bizarre, to say the least. I'll never forget it for the rest of my life, and the radio was about as ancient as you could. I mean, the tubes were, 2.5 foot tall, no such thing as transistors on that thing. It was about as old as it gets, so it was really neat. So I just feel sorry for the Russian people right now. They're very nice people, and they like the same things we like. They wear the same clothes, the same music, everything the same. It's just the governments. What can you say? It's the governments. So anyway, that's it on my boat stories. K7ITX.
ITX. Let's go to Jim in 7QO.
In 7QO. Comrade Dick. That's, I agree. Russians are friendly, and pretty much everywhere I've ever gone, the people in general are friendly. Everyone just encounters problems when you're dealing with governments. I don't know what it is, but that's kind of the way it is. Yeah, I could see boats to various events, performances, and whatnot. I have a couple friends who really enjoyed going out to like Seafair and joining with a whole bunch of boats along there watching the show. Yeah, a lot of fun. Let's see. Oh, Jim, Jupiter 3. I thought for a moment you were going to say the Jupiter 2, and I was thinking of Lost in Space and Dr. Smith and all this. Yeah, the robot. Yeah, danger, Will Robinson, danger. 3. Yeah. Oh well, close but no cigar. Well, thanks for showing that. That was really cool video. I had no idea that was going on. Yeah, it's funny when you get away from the computer for a couple of days, you find you've missed a whole bunch of news. That's one thing that's good about it. You hear all of these little stories that they just don't cover on regular television. I guess they figure it doesn't appeal to the masses or something. I don't know. I guess they only have so much time for news on television. But it seems like they have plenty of time for commercials on television. And then, even though I have cable, I have to watch commercials on cable. I kind of scratch my head on that. I don't quite get that one, but oh well, that's the way it is. Back to you, Dave, N7QO.
N7QO. Let's go to James, WU7N in Bellevue.
Thank you, Dave. I was wrong. Actually, the solar panels go 10 stories. I just put an infographic in the digital stream, and there's an interactive thing on that. And let me see if I can get up this static, which isn't quite as informative as the infographic, but you can see, that they, the 10 stories and 14 solar panels. And there's also, if you go online and look at this, they've got some really nice footage of the payload separating from the last stage. It's pretty impressive. I mean, I don't know. I'm still impressed by what I'm reading a book right now that essentially says how the lunar orbiter worked, and they actually shot it on Kodak film, processed it on the satellite, and then used a light beam that's, I believe, about 6 microns in width to scan the processed film, modulate a signal back to Earth where it was re-burned on film and then processed. So, and just in one lifetime, it's just amazing how far we've come. Now they're getting high-def, real-time images off of satellite payload separating. So I'm sure you've all seen the famous Apollo shot, which is used over and over again in all kinds of movies and TV because it was public source. It belonged to the U.S. government. Anyone could use it for any purpose. And of the flaring, separating and then the engine lighting off. And even as a kid, I said, wait a minute, how did they, if there's nobody on there, how did they get those pictures? Who developed the film? How did you do it? And so they had a camera, and they had to take that picture of that separation, then jettison the camera, then recover the bucket of film. And now, of course, it's all, real-time digital. Oh yeah, I was going to comment, Richard. Tubes. Yes, I remember going to a briefing, decades ago, and one of the reasons for tubes on the merchant marine is they were all picket ships. That was their purpose, and the tubes were immune to electromagnetic pulse, and they also were non-affected by a lot of jamming and electromagnetic damage and things like that. that had, for a long time, transistors just couldn't take it, including things like even lightning hits and such. Tubes were more robust. Of course, that's not true today anymore, if you engineer things correctly. But the difference between lightning strikes and electromagnetic pulse is primarily time. Very similar thing happens. Anyway. The KGB was always in charge of the ships. It didn't matter what kind of ship. There was always a political officer on board, and I think from what I was told, the tension between the captain, who is the captain in charge of the ship, and the political officer, I think was really well delineated in the fictional movie Hunt for Red October. There was a tension there, and I'm sure that made life difficult for both of them. It's 8:31 with 5 of us here. I don't know how you guys, how long you all want to go, but I'm wide open for however long. So let me turn it back to Dave, our net control for the Western Washington Amateur Television Society. My name is James, WW7N in Northeast Bellevue.
WW7N, and it's time for an ID again. This is the Western Washington Amateur Television Society net on the 08 machine. I'm Dave, KD7ZYM. Oh my, I was saying those 2-foot tall tubes on that Russian ship probably came down to about 20,000 watts to talk to the motherland from the ship. Those big tubes have a lot of power, so they could get a radio signal back to the motherland, I think, pretty easily with that technology. So it was kind of interesting that you were able to see those things. And that's about it. I haven't got much to say back here in Lake City. I don't know, I have an allergy or something that's come up the last couple of days. I think after the rain came up, all of a sudden a little wind whipped up, and I think all of the remaining pollen is destined for my nose to say hello. So anyway, I've been a little bit stuffy the last couple of days, but I'm sure it will go away. Anyway, that's what's happening here, so let's go back up to the top of the list to Jessica, KF7UHK.
Reminded me of a time when I was working at Boeing that I got to see this system we were building. Part of the lab I was working at the time, we're building a self-destruct module for some kind of rocket. I'm not sure what kind of rocket it was. I don't think they ever told me. But this self-destruct unit was probably about a foot tall, but the size of a rocket. Okay, so it was just a little small module, and it had a little receiver in there, and this would apparently pick up the self-destruct signal and send it off into whatever they needed to do. But what this shop was doing was they were testing this thing for vibration, and so they had this big machine that looked like it had the big tubes in it, and everybody put earmuffs on. They'd go into another room, and then they would shake this thing with high frequencies and varying frequencies and changing frequencies up, down, right, left, and all different directions, just to see if it would hold together. And they would send signals to it and see if it was receiving signals and making it through this shake test. And so these tubes were the main unit that would send the amplification to make these shakers happen. And I never got to be there when they actually did the test, but I got to see the machine, and it was pretty cool. And seeing these big tubes, they probably said RCA on the side of them, but they were big tubes. And so I got to witness that, and that was part of the SIL lab, which we called the something integration lab. That doesn't tell you anything. But they also had a rotary. In their possession, they had a rotary cruise missile launcher, and this thing would hold 8 cruise missiles. And they said they could spin this thing around and drop one per second cruise missiles out and program them at the last minute as they were deciding where they were going to drop onto. And they said that the B-2 bomber was going to have like 3 of these things on their B-2 bomber, so they could drop these things in succession. And it's like, well, that's very scary. And so I got to see that too. And I think they were building cables for that, because we did a lot of cable work and making wiring harnesses for things. So very interesting. So that's all I got right here. This is Jessica, KF7UHK. Sylvia's gonna come walking in the door a few minutes. She's worked all day too. So I may head out when she gets here. But this is KF7UHK.
HK, let's go to Richard, K7ITX in Kent.
All right. Well, yeah, I'd say it's been kind of slow, except we did have guests. My son and his wife are down from Bellingham attending the 20th class reunion for Kentwood High School. And so I'm pretty happy for them to be doing that, and I'm happy they came down, and I don't know if they didn't need to give me anything. But anyway, they did give me this, a vest that's wired, a wired down vest. Well, not down, I doubt, but like a down vest, and but wired with well, to keep you warm. I mean, warm in the back or warm in the front. I mean, I've heard of them with batteries and stuff like this. Is actually, you plug it into, yeah, right. Go through TSA, I'm sure. They'd love it. That's I don't know, I've had my run-ins with TSA. I don't want to push it. But you just plug it into a USB charging port, and has little buttons on the breast pocket, and one's for, like I said, the back, and one's for the front, and I can see where I might enjoy that, when it's colder and in the fall or something, when it's not raining but cold enough to where you don't really feel like wearing a full jacket. You might have long sleeve shirt on, but it's still kind of nippy. Then but you got this thing, you just push these little buttons and you warm right up. I've heard of gloves like that. So anyway, so that was a pretty nice gift, I thought. So yeah, no, I don't really have too much else to cover, really. I can't think of anything, and nothing too exciting like usual, like at the hospital when people get lost, or they practically wreck their niece's car or lifted truck in the parking garage, and or the donor walk, that kind of business. I really going to Auburn Regional. I never was too impressed with Auburn because a friend of mine's wife died there unexpectedly for something very that should have been routine, and then I had only known him as a workmate, really, but I'd known him for longer than that. But I'll never forget. I'm the one that took the call from the doctor while he was out to lunch, and when the doctor realized he wasn't there, he goes, "Oh, do you know how can you get a hold of him?" And I go, "Well, I think so. I think he went to Kentucky Fried Chicken or something like that." He goes, "Well, if there's any way you can get a hold of him, get a hold of him right away and have him call me." Well, and then so lo and behold, he comes back with someone that's with him and takes off, and I guess the doctor told him that his wife was on a ventilator. And boy, when you hear that, it can't be good. And So I went down to the hospital after work only to find out that she had passed away. And he had two little daughters, like, 11 and 12 years old, and God, what a way to meet them, first time I met them, it was awful. It was just so sad, so sad. So I don't have really good memories of Auburn Hospital because of that, but boy, I sure like it right now, though. They are, I guess there's something. It's a very small hospital, and as often as I've been going there for pulmonary rehab, you get to know a lot of the greeters, especially. Yeah, the greeters are pretty cool people. And I don't know if they get paid or they just volunteer or whatever, but so anyway, just thought I'd throw that out there because I really haven't been doing that much except that. So anyway, 73, if it doesn't come back to me, that's fine, that's cool. And we'll just see how it goes. K7ITX, back to net control.
ITX, let's go to Jim, N7QO.
N7QO, thank you, Dave. Wow. Well, 2-foot tubes. I will bet on that boat all of the lights would dim whenever they keyed the transmitter. Man, that's gotta pull some juice, I would think. And Jessica, USB toaster. Wow, thanks. That's kind of cool. And when you mentioned the shake test, I don't know, for some reason the first thing that went through my head is maybe associating pilots flying through turbulence when they're supposed to be trying to avoid the turbulence. Maybe the government didn't trust their pilots to avoid the areas of turbulence. So, but yeah, I've heard that as well. That the tubes are highly resistant to EMPs. Let's see, Dick. I'll bet if you don't like that vest, all you have to do, turn on the heat, look at who's to your left there, and Mika would love camping out on that vest. So if you don't like it, don't give it away. And yeah, I've heard of several people, not only here in Seattle, but a couple of relatives, in fact, who have died in hospitals under, let us say, questionable circumstances. I don't know. You never know if there are people who made mistakes, given the wrong medication, not given the proper quantity of something. You just never know, unfortunately. And hospital greeters, yeah. I had a friend used to, several of us near my house used to meet up pretty much every day for lunch. And one of the fellows, we called him Hospital Jim. He worked as a greeter at Valley Medical Center. He died a few years ago. Yeah, the hospital greeters all seem to be friendly and helpful. Yeah, we miss him anyway. Back to you, Dave, N7QO.
7QO, get a quick ID here. Again, this is the Western Washington Amateur Television Society net on the 08 machine. I'm Dave, KD7CYM. Let's go to James, WW7N.
Thank you, Dave. One thing I'd like to say came up this morning, the 5th Saturday drill. The only 2 hours a week I'm aware of that we use the PL tone of 103.5 is for these nets at 8 p.m. on Wednesdays and Saturdays. But if anybody knows different, let me know. Normally it's the 110 PL. Anyway, interesting conversation tonight. I'm sort of out of things to say. I'll put that infographic in the comments if you want to learn where the state-of-the-art in communications satellites are. That is worth clicking on the little plus signs and learning all about that. So anyway, this is James, WW7ATS. Thank you very much. I'm going to say 73s to all, and turn back to our net control, Dave.
WW7N, thanks for that. This is Dave, KD7ZYM. Well, listening to Jessica talk about self-destruction modules in testing and building them reminded me back in my early days of working in television in Seattle. Boeing was testing a device for cruise missiles for guidance systems in 1968, and they invited the press to come along on a twin-engine plane they had to see how this worked with the terrain. And we got down about over to the coast, and one of the engines burned up on the plane, and we crippled back to Boeing Field. So the test was sort of, maybe it worked, maybe it didn't, but we hugged the ground for about 300 feet above the terrain down that far, and then we aborted the mission and came back. So anyway, that was an early prototype for a cruise missile control. So that was kind of interesting, some of the things that you get to do in the media. And oh my, always something. And again, this is Dave, KD7ZYM. We still got about 15 minutes left, so let's go back up to Jessica, KF7UHK.
The other thing I was able to witness, never saw it getting shot, but I got to see the equipment. That was the legendary chicken gun. There was a water pipe that was, a very heavy-duty water pipe that was about 8 inches in diameter, and a great big tank that they would fill up with air behind this water tank, and they had a little piece of metal sheet between the air tank and this water pipe that they had put. I think they called it a squib, which is a small explosive device, and they were testing airplane windows by shooting chickens at the airplane window, and they put a chicken down this pipe. They hit the button, they'd blow up that piece of metal. All that air in that thing would shoot the chicken out the water pipe and into the window. And you had to have a freshly killed chicken before you put it in there. You couldn't, because frozen chickens don't hit airplane windows, and so they couldn't have it frozen. And they said they would euthanize them with like carbon dioxide. And the public, and this is up in near Marysville, the Tulalip reservation up there. The public wanted to know about this because they heard about it, and so Boeing invited some folks in to come take a look, and they all kind of said, yeah, well, it makes sense, so they did it. But I asked one of the men who had worked on this project, who cleans up the chicken after it's been shot, and what kind of job title do you have to have for that? He says, oh, after you shoot one of these things, there's nothing left. It's just a bunch of feathers. And it's like, okay, that's gruesome. But I got to see this equipment. It looked very primitive, and there was a piece of a nose cone that was sitting there, probably for demonstration purposes, so they could see how this thing would work. It's like, okay, and this was part of the destructive testing area of Boeing, because they also had a big piece of a fuselage that they were pressurizing and depressurizing. And I think their idea was to do it 1 million times. After one of our airplanes out there decompressed in mid-flight, like over Hawaii or something like that, or over the ocean somewhere. And so they wanted to make sure this didn't happen again. I want to say someone got sucked out the airplane somewhere, and so they had a piece of this fuselage that was always breathing. When you go up to the site up there, it'd be, you could hear it pressurizing and depressurizing, pressurizing and depressurizing. and it was kind of odd because it sounded like a breathing machine that this thing was doing, and it did about every 30 seconds. It did another cycle. So it was very very spooky. And what a spooky job to have, is to try to figure out why this happened and write a report about it. Anyhow, that's all I got. I'm going to pass it back. I'm going to go ahead and say 73 also. This is Jessica K at 7UHK.
UHK, thanks for that. Let's go to Richard, K7ITX.
Well, as far as industry mock-ups and testing goes, I was in on the early stages of detention glass. You know, when they first were building the King County jail, and then at the same time they were building the Multnomah County Justice Center in Portland. But before they built them, they, the big thing back then was special new regulations to eliminate jail bars, and so they, went for glass. Well, of course, the glass had to be strong enough, to avoid escape. And so anyway, we'd have the manufacturers would test in some field somewhere and invite all of us to watch, and they'd have some detention glass mocked up, and then it looked like some guy just right out of prison with a sledgehammer would beat away on it, and so that was pretty cool to see that. And then the next test would be someone with a 45 caliber, and and try to shoot his way through it and that kind of stuff. And so all that was pretty interesting. What was really interesting, though, then after everything got built, to actually go on tour of the Multnomah County Jail. Finished and occupied, except it was called the Multnomah County Justice Center. And I'll never forget, so when we're touring around and stuff, when, someone says, well, when are we going to get to go inside the jail? And he looked at us and he goes, you're in it right now. And so it was weird, because it just didn't seem like that's how jail should be, because you're so used to seeing it on TV with, just real poor conditions. And but as we went a little bit further down the hallway, there would be once in a while someone screaming through some door or the other side of a piece of glass, yelling at us that they haven't let me out of here for 2 or 3 days. The food's terrible. You start hearing stuff like that. But it was odd. But the thing I thought was so weird is how the main intake for people coming in to going to jail, it was kind of like a lobby that, like the bus station or something. It wasn't, they weren't all, everybody wasn't all in handcuffs or anything. So it was kind of a wake-up call for me that, they're not behind bars anymore. Or at least, no, I'm sure they are in other places, institutions, but certainly not in Oregon and Washington. The metropolitan jail systems don't quite have that anymore, or at least the ones I'm associated with or saw. Okay, well, 73, yeah, I'm all out. Okay, so great seeing you guys. K7ITX, back to net control.
7ITX, let's go down to Jim in 7QO.
N7QO, thank you, Dave. Well, Dick, guys yelling, let me out, and the food is lousy. Obviously they were single guys, huh? I don't know. Let's see, Jessica, chicken gun. Yeah, I remember reading about that. But that accomplished a few things too. On our aircraft, the windshields are heated, mostly for ice protection. But that chicken gun also helped them figure out that warm windshields are far more pliable. They're much less likely to break. So many years ago, we used to only turn on the windshield heat going up at altitude where the temperatures were going down. But now it's part of the before taxi checklist. Basically, you turn on the windshield heat and warm them up, and the temperature is regulated. So once they're heated to a certain temperature, it'll click the heat off. But they're heated from the ground, and that increased the level of safety as well. So those chicken guns did a couple of things actually. Haven't thought about that for a few years, but that's pretty cool. Let's see. I'm out of stuff to say here. So back to you, Dave, N7QO.
QO, speechless, I might say. Welcome anyway to the net. Let's go to James, WU7N.
Dave, I'll let you wrap it up here. We managed to make an hour out of it. Certainly appreciate everyone joining tonight. Interesting stories. WU7N.
WU7N, this is Dave, KD7CYM in Lake City. Well, I was thinking of another Boeing test story. Gone out to Boeing Field. It's, I think, about 1969. Went to a hangar out at Boeing Field, and they had a mock-up of a jet inside the hangar, and they had these huge electrical platforms that were on each side of the jet, and the object was that it would create a lightning bolt and strike the jet to see how it would react. And then inside the hangar was this big trailer. It was probably about 20 feet wide by 40 feet long, and it had these big glass windows in it, and so they ushered us into that area so we could view what was going on. And all of a sudden there was this big flash of lightning and a big explosion sound. I thought they blew up the plane, but they had about 6 of those volleys going to the plane to test it. Then they went out and they had all kinds of instrumentation that was inside the big trailer that they were looking at gauges, and then they inspected the plane. But we were able to take some pictures out the window, but the only thing you could probably see was sort of a flash of lightning, and then you could see about 3 frames of the plane lit up, and then that was it. That was all that we could do visually. So that was another one of those experiences. So with that, I'm going to wrap up the net. This is the Western Washington Amateur Television Society net on the 08 machine. We'd like to thank the SeaTac Repeater Association for letting us use WW7ATS repeater 14708 with a specific tone of 103.5 for our nets held on Wednesdays and Saturdays. So on behalf of the Western Washington Amateur Television Society, terminating the net at 8:59. This is Dave, KD7CYM. Good evening, all.
you.